Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella, Herrera. Maricella, how are you doing this week?
I'm surviving. I'm good. How are you?
The same. We're doing good. Many of our listeners have heard me talk about my kids, and we're just making the best of this time and really enjoying. I have to say, we've been spending more nights, watching movies and dinners together and playing and having just adventures, and that's been pretty great. So yeah, looking at the bright side.
That's nice. I'm waiting patiently for new mask I ordered that I'm hoping will allow me to go back out and run without feeling like I'm gonna die. Not because of the virus, just because I am trying to, when I run, I do try to run with a mask now, and it's so hard. So hopefully with this one I will be able to, and that is the bright spot in my week.
So tell me more about this mask.
It's made out of like some other different material. I think it's by a company that does like hats for cyclists. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. My running coach recommended it. She tried it and said that it was working better than the other thing I was using. So we'll see. I will report back once I have that mask and have been able to go out and try to run. I haven't ran in forever, so I'm sure I'll try to do a mile and feel like I'm gonna pass out.
You will do it. I have every confidence in you. You're one of the strongest people I know.
Thank you.
Well, of course. And I want to hear about the mask. I just bought new running shoes, so that was my, gotta get up and do something, kicking my butt. So, which, after our podcast conversation last week with Melissa, and we talked about, money mindfulness, but this to me is not just the dopamine hit. I think it's going to be good for my health and my well-being. So I'm excited about getting to run, and you can be my virtual running mate and hold me accountable.
Oh yeah, we should sync our running apps.
All right. We're going to do that. We're also going to hear today from Kelli Wingo, who is a career coach and expert, really just talking about, what we should be thinking about during this time and always around our career well-being and growth. And, it's part of what we do a lot here at Ellevate is leaning on our community for that advice and insights to help us today, tomorrow, and always. And Kelli certainly has some great tips for us all to tap into.
I can't wait. I feel like this is when we all need a lot of this. So I'm looking forward to hear what she has to say.
Well, let's get to the conversation now. Kelli, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast. It is quite an honor to have you here with us.
Oh, wow. Thank you for having me, Kristy. I've been really excited for this, so glad to get started.
I know it's during this time, it's just been so great to keep the podcast going and be able to really connect with others on a deeper level, have these conversations. I've been learning quite a bit, and I'm sure that this conversation will be no different.
Yes, I'm excited. I am very excited. So thank you for having me.
Kelli, would you mind giving us just some background? What is your backstory and what are you doing today?
Well, it's interesting when you ask about backstory because it's like you always feel like you want to start, I was born on a sunny Tuesday in April, but I won't go that far back. I think one of the interesting things about me is actually the origin of my name. As you know, my name is Kelli. My first name is Kelli. My last name is Wingo. And a lot of people ask about my connection to the War Room Coaching name, which is actually the umbrella company I have, and why I feel so connected to warrior life and warrior status. And I'll start with that because when I was young, I looked up the meaning of my name. And for those of you who may not be fluent in Gaelic, Kelli actually means warrior, lively, aggressive. The disconnect, though, was the fact that I was a painfully shy child, like really, really shy. Like if your name wasn't mommy or daddy, I was probably not going to talk to you. And so when I found out the meaning of my name being warrior, lively, aggressive, it really kind of intimidated me because I didn't connect to that. Well, fast forward many years into my adulthood, and I started to find my voice and my rhythm. And I realized that being a warrior is really not one prototype. It's really about strategically using your God-given gifts to prevail, and I realized that I am a warrior, I am lively. And while I don't necessarily consider myself aggressive because my general personality is pretty chill, I am aggressive in using my voice and helping others to do the same. So that's a little bit of my backstory. I feel like my superpower really is finding and excavating the greatness in others, because we have so much more power and influence than we give ourselves credit for. So that's really how I declare my warrior status. So when people call me Kelli, they call me warrior, and it really reminds me of who I am.
I love that story. I just kept thinking of my daughter as you were saying that, because she is also, she's pretty shy, but she's the strongest person I know. And
wow, yeah,
it's how, from a societal level, we tend to associate, certain actions or traits with, characteristics or assumptions about people. And I'm like so excited that you just opened up this conversation with like, let's break down those stereotypes.
Yes.
Let's talk about, how we really harness what's true about us and what, what our strengths are.
Yes, absolutely.
I had a question. You had said, how much you gain strength from using your voice, especially for others. Do you find it easier to advocate for others over yourself, or can you do both?
I can do both. And I think it's very important to learn to do both. I think that our greatness lies in our service and ability to help others, first of all, because we're not here by ourselves. And I think, in this time of so-called social distancing, although I take issue with that terminology, it's really more physical distancing than social distancing. I think it's very important to find that connection and advocate on behalf of others. And I think we're seeing that a lot in the environment that we're in. But you can't really advocate for others if you don't advocate for yourself. It's very important to understand what your worth is, because the beauty of it is that there is only one you in 7.5 billion. There's no prototype of you, there's only you. And understanding that authentic voice, as, at risk of using an overused word such as authenticity, it's very important to understand what your superpowers are, what your gifts, what your skills are, because that is actually how you are in service to other people. So I learned over my years that, even though I had more of a muted voice when I was a child, there is power in what I give to others, what I feed into others, how I empower others. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't own my own voice. So it's very important to see both sides of it. It's not one greater than the other. You need both.
Kelli, tell me more about your business.
So my main business is called KMW Catalyst, as I talked about a little bit before. My umbrella company is War Room Coaching, and there are two prongs to that. KMW Catalyst is a leadership development company that is transforming the business experience into the human experience. And I focus on entrepreneurial culture, employee experience, vision, and strategy. So to that end, I do consulting, coaching, one-on-one team coaching, a lot of speaking engagements, writing, thought leadership around that space, primarily B2B, but also B2C as well. The other prong of my business is called Spirit in Motion, where it is an oratory company or public speaking company dedicated to eradicating the oppression of limiting belief. A lot of times, as I was saying before, we limit ourselves. So the goal of Spirit in Motion is to break those oppressive thought processes and mindsets to really realize what we were always created to be.
I want to dig into that. I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
I feel oftentimes I'm my own worst enemy. And I hear that from so many other women. And we, are told, and we want to. I mean, I love going out there and speaking if it's a one-on-one conversation or if it's an event. And I doubt that, though. You can think, is my viewpoint unique? Is it something that I can stand behind, or that is, thought out? I mean, we tend to be our own worst critic, and that it becomes really hard when, when you're trying to really have that impact you want to have. What do you hear from your customers, and what is some of the advice you typically give?
Well, I think things such as imposter syndrome, especially with women, with everyone, but especially with women, and having those doubts about what you bring to the table is more prevalent than it really needs to be. I always ask clients and people in general, what skill set were you born with? Did you know everything you know today when you were born? The answer is no. Everything is learned. Everything is learned. So it's not really a matter of saying, well, am I doing this right? And there's no such thing as right or wrong. Am I bringing enough to the table? Am I offering value? Just by being you. Everyone has a PhD, an MD, a BS, an MS in being you. Nobody else does. So your voice and your thought process is unique only to you. And because of that, everything you bring to the table is unique. Topics may not be unique. Ideas may not be unique, but your perspective and your take on them is unique, because nobody can think like you, walk like you, dress like you, do anything like you, but you. Confidence comes before skill every day of the week and twice on Sundays. You need to have enough confidence to know that you've got a good brain. Everybody's got a good brain. We're all intelligent in our own way. We can figure out whatever it is we need to know. So when we go into these situations and understanding, okay, these are my strengths and this is what I believe, then there's no wrong way to be you. You are the only person who can define yourself. You are the only person who can say, this is what I feel, and I have every right to feel how I feel, and this is what value I provide to my clients, my customers, my friends, my family.
How does that, or does that shift in a time like now? Many of the women in our community are looking for ways to, stand out in their workplace, particularly when they're not, physically present. Or some are looking for a new job during this time, and it can feel overwhelming that you're swimming upstream with so many other fish. And what are the ways to stand out, and are there things that we can do during a time when maybe we can't leave the house, or when we're trying to just navigate a way to do that authentically?
I think there are two words that I'm hearing, and I think a lot of us are hearing most often, especially in this pandemic, and that's paralysis and fear. That thinking that now is not a good time for big changes. It's time to hunker down and cling to the last shreds of life as we used to know it, life and career, when it's really just the opposite. Because if you think about the fact that we're in these, and I hate to say it because it's unprecedented is used so much, but I'm going to use it in this case. We're living in unprecedented times. This is probably one of the best times for opportunity in our history. When you think about what we were 2 months ago, which seems like it's years ago, but it was really only about 2 months ago before at least people in this area of the country, New York City area, had been on quarantine and lockdown and essential workers and all of that. Sometimes we run so fast and we're so used to doing things how we used to do it that we don't realize we've been running around in a circle. This is a great time to really reevaluate, what is it that you want? not what you should want, not what other people think you should want, but what do you want? You can't be concerned about, not rocking the boat because the boat's already capsized. Okay. The past is no more. To put it bluntly, you need to get with it or get lost. It's kind of like having a hairline fracture. At first, you may not feel it or you feel a little bit of a ping, but sometimes if you don't take care of it and address it, you start limping and you start having more pain and more issues until you're so used to walking with a broken foot, you don't even realize you have a broken foot. Being in a time like this, when you are forced to sit down and you're forced to reevaluate, you realize that there are a lot of things that we were doing less than 2 months ago were broken. We were just running so fast that we couldn't see it. So when we talk about looking for a new job or even maybe starting a new business, this is a great time to make a pivot because you have the ability to custom design exactly what you want. A lot of us are in some ways starting at ground zero. Either we're at home quarantined, or maybe essential workers may be out there on the front lines. But that quiet space is when you say, okay, this is what's working. This is what's not working. I'm here homeschooling my kids. I'm trying to work remotely. Maybe my spouse is also working in the same space. We're trying to all figure this out together. This is a great time to say, okay, maybe working from home, if you didn't do that primarily, is good for you. Results only workplaces, I think, are going to be the wave of the future. So instead of like a standard 9 to 5 for a lot of us, where you have deadlines of you need this by 2 o'clock, this by 3 o'clock, this by 4 o'clock, there are going to be some overarching deadlines and you get done what you need to get done by that last deadline. Some people, you got to homeschool your kids during the day. If your daughter needs help with a math problem at 2 o'clock, you don't necessarily have time to do that particular work problem. You need to take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, help her through her work problem. But you're going to get whatever you need to get done. So I think when we start shifting our mindset, because we don't really have a choice to, this is really a good time to start thinking about, is this the industry that I need to be in? Do I want to continue with the same job I have? Do I want to do something different? And be intentional about making steps to get the life and the career that you want.
I'm listening to what you're saying and nodding, although you can't see it. Because this is what's been on my mind, and mind of so many of the women I'm talking to during this time is, and before that, I mean, if we're being honest, but, it's hard to really set aside the time for yourself, right? It's like you said, you're running with a broken foot and you don't even realize it anymore. And I'm struggling even more right now to find time for myself because I'm constantly surrounded by other people and it's hard to set boundaries and when work starts and when work ends. And it's just, I feel like I'm going, and there's always things to fill the time and the space. And those things are not the questions I need to ask myself or the self-evaluation and assessment. Is there, how do we just put ourselves first? And I know so many of our listeners are thinking about this, just, sure, it sounds great to do these things, but I've got, all these other aspects that are taking precedence. But I think if you don't put yourself first, and I know that is hard for a variety of reasons, then, you're the one who suffers the most.
Right. And I think you really just said it. First of all, it's understandable that some people may be frustrated in trying to figure out, if I'm trying to juggle 25 balls. I used to just juggle 10, but now I have 25 because everybody's at home and I'm trying to be teacher and everything else. How exactly am I doing this? What I would encourage you to do, and I encourage my clients to do, is to list out everything that you currently do and put them into 3 buckets. What is a need, what you have to do? What is a desire, which is maybe not a need, but something that you strongly desire and you really should do, but it's not quite a need. And then what is a wish? It's a nice to have. I wish I had this, but it's not quite a desire and it's not quite a need. And then put everything else. So it's really 4 buckets. The things you put in everything else, forget about that. We're not worried about that right now. The first thing after that I tell clients to do is to put self-care in that need bucket. That is absolutely positively a requirement. Because what you touched upon is exactly that. If you are running on empty, what exactly are you giving? Children want to see their mother happy. Spouses want to see their significant other happy. If you are not happy, if you are running on empty, then what are you giving? You're not able to give even everything that you can to your children, to your significant other, to your jobs, if you're not taking care of yourself first. So even when you look at your schedule, time block, make them color coded if you need to, and figure out, first of all, what is your best schedule. Some people are morning people, some people are evening people. So for instance, if you're a morning person, then if your version of self-care is taking a walk or doing some type of exercise, whatever it is, put that on your calendar, block it out so nobody else can schedule something and say, okay, from 7 to 8 or even 7 to 7:30, this is my time to do whatever I want. I can read a book, I can go for a walk, I can take a bath, whatever it is that you want to do. It's not a nice to have. It is a absolute necessity. An interesting thing about a lot of things that you think you have to do, when you don't focus on something right away, it's miraculous how some things just seem to just work themselves out. Sometimes we think everything is an emergency, but if everything is an emergency, nothing is. There are some things that you think that I have to do this, and when you take your eye off of it, even for a half hour, an hour, 2 hours, first of all, it could correct itself. And then secondly, when you come back with a refreshed mind, you come back with a renewed perspective and maybe a different approach to your problems, whether it be issues with work or how you're going to handle homeschooling your child, or how you're going to figure out, okay, my husband's going to be in this room and I'm going to be in this room working. So you have to be intentional about it. Think of it as you don't have a choice. You have a choice in everything else. This is a non-negotiable.
This is great. This is exactly what I needed today. Kelli, you are such a force and have so much strength, and you may not realize it, but it's coming through the airwaves and giving me that strength. So thank you for what you do and your impact. And I know you also are really involved in the Ellevate community,
Yes.
Particularly in northern New Jersey.
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear one of your favorite memories or your experience with that. It's during this time especially, I've been overwhelmed with gratitude for our community and for the work that we're doing for each other. And it really is that power of lifting each other up. And so I would love to just hear your story.
Sure. My membership at Ellevate has been a whirlwind. And I say that in the best way possible. I joined Ellevate, I think it was like the week before Labor Day last year. And I can't even tell you, it's been an amazing 8 months. I don't necessarily, and the crazy part is I don't necessarily have a specific memory. I think the experience in totality has been such an awesome thing for me. And I would be remiss if I didn't shout out Susan Mazanson. I know her through Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, and she talked to me about Ellevate probably 2 years ago. And you know how we were talking before, sometimes you're running so fast. I'm like, I'm looking into it, and just never really, sat down and looked at it until like that week before Labor Day, when it's kind of unofficial end of summer. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a couple of hours. I'm going to look at this website and see if this is something for me. Loved what I saw. And I read a lot about you, Kristy. And I was like, I've resonated with you. You just have such a kind spirit. I said, well, I think this is going to work for me. And I was familiar with Sally Krawcheck from financial services. I spent 25 years in financial services, so I'm familiar with her from that sphere. And can I say, like, I reached out to the leaders. I'm in Northern New Jersey. I'm in New York chapter as well as Central Jersey. So I reached out to all the leaders that I could find in those chapters, and they were so welcoming. I reached out to them on LinkedIn and some on the Ellevate network, and they were so welcoming. And I think within a week of me joining Ellevate and reaching out to the leaders, I got this wonderful ping from Rebecca, who's one of like the leaders in New York. So shout out to Rebecca. And she had asked me to do a workshop for the young professionals in New York, and shout out to Jess Stewart and Jeanette Spaulding, because they're like, so wonderful in getting me started and set up with that speaking engagement. And then in Northern New Jersey, I am as you had mentioned, I am a new leader, one of the leaders, chapter event leaders for Northern New Jersey. Shout out to Tez Roro, Andrea Turner, Monisha Kapoor, Stephanie Jedra, Christina Curial, which they're an amazing team of leaders. And I am having the time of my life. They are so great. I think the thing about Ellevate that I am so excited about is just the connections, the human connections. I have not met one person that I somehow didn't feel connected to. And I think that's really the beauty of Ellevate. I would highly recommend it to any woman who is looking to make those types of strategic connections on a human level, on a life level, on a career level, because even out of this, I've gotten other speaking engagements, and just, it's been such an awesome opportunity. So it's just been like from A to B. These last 8 months, I feel like I packed in more in this organization than I have in a lot. So I am very grateful to Ellevate for welcoming me into the fold.
Kelli, thank you for that. I really do appreciate that. And it means a great deal to me, more than you probably could ever realize, just to hear that that our values, that our impact, that, the community we're trying to create is there. Because it really is about just, being kind and welcoming and generous of spirit, and how we, share our expertise and create those connections and relationships that will not just help us today, but in the future. So thank you for being a part of that and such a leader.
Absolutely.
In the community. And thank you for being on the podcast today and sharing your expertise and just energy with me and with our listeners. It's been wonderful to catch up with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Kristy. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Ellevate NTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.